looks like 37 of us already, and I'm sure we'll have a couple more join us. But thank you so much for being here. This is the district leader session, or people that kind of work across schools. So we know we have a lot of different roles in here, but I think our conversation today will give us a great opportunity to share and to connect. And we see this as the first of many of these, but hopefully not too many. So we'll have Wednesdays until we don't need them anymore. So welcome, everybody. And so I think, Shayla, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Absolutely. Let's see if I can get my screen.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
And I'm Mary Ann Wolf. And so I am the Senior Director of the Professional Learning and Leading Collaborative. And I think several of you have been part of some of our programs over the years and been engaged with us in one way or another. Lots of familiar faces today. So as we were really thinking about, okay, how can we support the field? We know there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of lists of great resources out there, but in some way that's also overwhelming. And so we thought by bringing together all of you wonderful leaders, we can actually have time and space to share what's working and what challenges. And next week, we might decide we need to focus on a particular topic with you all, if that's what you come back with. But really, this is a space for us to share and to think together. So Shayla, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, sorry. Hi, I am Shayla Rexroad. I am also a part of the PLLC team at the Friday Institute. I see a lot of familiar names and faces popping up. For those of you who I've not met, we are absolutely thrilled to have you with us today. And again, Marianne and I are here to be a sounding board, but feel free to use the chat window to come off of unmute, because this really is just that open space for us to start the conversation and start to identify where we can help you most through this interesting time in education.
Yes, and I think as most of you know, the Friday Institute works across North Carolina, but also across the country and even across the world with our SEL and Learning Differences work. And so we get to spend different days every single week with practitioners and people in the field. And so we continue to really just appreciate how much you all do. And we know that right now, every ounce of creativity and figuring out how to meet the needs of kids is being tapped into. And so we're hoping today we can provide some good support and at least a great place for you all to come in as a sounding board. I think our next slide goes into kind of the different parts of Zoom, just to make sure that you're all familiar so you can see that. And we will be recording, but we might need to click that. I think I can do that. I think Shayla, you have to do that too.
What do you need me to do? I'm sorry.
The record button. The record button.
Yes, I'm recording. It should be recording.
Okay, great. And then these sessions are designed to be informal and discussion based. So please jump in. Please feel free to let us know, hey, wait a minute, can we spend a little more time on this? Like, the entire purpose of this is for you all. And so we don't want you to be shy. And then right now, if you don't mind, we would love for you to go ahead and put your name, kind of your role or area or school district in the chat, just so we can get a quick sense. Oh, most of you are already doing that. So we see we have several instructional coaches, some new teacher supports. We have some lead beginning teacher mentors. So thank you all for sharing that, and that will help us kind of focus our conversations today. And we're thrilled to see some district administrators as well with us. So thank you so much. And I just continue to be, we have some principals too. So just continue to be amazed at all the great work that you all are doing on a daily basis. And hopefully you're following along in the chat and you can see that. For all the seriousness of what we're doing, we did want to start out with just a quick light moment. And we want you to tell us, you can put number 1 through 6, which movie title best describes the impact of the coronavirus on your professional life? Is it Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Pursuit of Happiness, Disney's Frozen, Fast and Furious, Clueless, or Nightmare on Elm Street? And which one? Yes, I'm seeing some Fast and Furious there. Oh no, and a 2-year-old. So Okay, lots of Fast and Furious, but certainly a few Clueless thrown in there. And hey, we have one Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I think I want to come. Stephen, I see that's you. Well, thank you all for sharing. And I think the best thing is that it's not over. And yes, thanks to Disney Plus, right, for sharing Frozen 2 with us early. Even my teenagers are there. So what we want to talk about today is just some best practices. And we know you've only been given a few days to prepare that. And something, if you know the Friday Institute, that we always talk through is this idea that it's very different, right, designing and how you think about instruction. You can't just take what you've been doing every day in a face-to-face setting and suddenly snap your fingers and think that that can be online. And so we don't ever want to give that impression. And so as we go through today, just know that we appreciate how difficult it is. And also there are so many constraints that you have, whether your students have devices or not, whether or not students have access to the internet. And some of your students might be having to watch younger children when they're at home or taking care of others. So please know that everything we talk about, we are really thinking through that. So please think through that. And yes, I know we do have some jealousy for our colleagues that are on track out right now, because that is helping them just a little bit. So we're just going to start with a few quick tips. And Shayla, if you want to pop in, don't hesitate either. The first one is to be proactive and be realistic. And as you're thinking through this, I think sometimes we think, oh, we're going to have every minute of a school day suddenly online, or suddenly the students are going to be doing schoolwork all day the way they are. And we know family life is not like that, right? And home life is not like that. But on top of that, it's very different when you're in a school and you're sitting in a classroom and you have that face-to-face connection. It doesn't mean you can't have very meaningful work and that students can't do tremendous work, but we want to be realistic about what's possible and what success even looks like. I also think the more that you can be proactive and share information on what students can expect, what families can expect, not that you should have that answer out yet, but as you're kind of building that, start to think through, what is it that we want families to come to get used to? You know, is it that in elementary school, we think students are going to do 3 or 4 different activities a day based on these choices that they have? Is it in middle school that they're logging into Google Classroom for every single classroom every single day? Like, what does that look like in your school? And there's not a right or wrong answer, but we think that's important. And the other thing, I think I started to see some stress show up more on social media, where families say, oh, my kids think they're supposed to be doing this, they're behind. And make sure families know and students know that you know that it might be challenging. Like, I know our internet is already being taxed and we're on what, day 2 or 3. And so I'm calling in on this, and then I have the video just in case that disappears today. So just make sure people know that you understand students might not be able to get work in at all the same time. There might be things like that. So not saying we don't want them to engage, but let's also be realistic and proactive about that so we limit stress. The next thing we wanted to share is this idea around how important it really is to keep fostering relationships and building empathy, even from a distance. I think, you know, we spend so much time talking about that foundation and how we're working with the whole child, right? Not just the academic side. And one of the best things about technology and even telephones, quite frankly, is just because we're not with a student in a classroom does not mean we can't continue to connect. And so when you think about people in your district who maybe have been like TAs and you're trying to figure out how do we keep them working and doing all that, is that a person that can check in? You know, do your social workers and others continue to check in with the same students they would check in class, but either do it electronically or by phone? What can teachers really build so that they actually have opportunities for students to either submit something and get feedback, right? So how do you stay connected? Rowan Salisbury actually shared today, I've seen a few different versions of this, but one of their schools is doing a morning 2-minute video, kind of their like announcements, but they're just putting a video on YouTube every day, and you have a different teacher. I could even see getting older kids doing that. It could be district wide. I mean, there's like the one video for the whole district where you ask high schoolers to do it. But what is that one thing every day people can go and still feel connected? I'm part of this community, because I don't think we yet know how isolating this is going to feel. But the more we can think about, is it a video every day? Does the teacher want to send that out? Whatever that looks like, I think can be just a really important thing, and you can put that in place early, but also be really consistent. Has someone heard from that student, every day, and what does that look like? And then the last tip that I'm going to share is around creating opportunities for inquiry, right? What are those communities? So some of the things that I think we all value so much in school is how our students can collaborate and how they can work together. And so the beauty of that is, if you're in a school, we're going to ask you in a couple of minutes, where most students have some kind of a device, or all students do, can you actually create opportunities for them to work together? They just won't physically be in the same room. And I think there's a lot of possibility there. And so as we're thinking that through, can you also have maybe an elementary student is asked to interview people in their family or their grandparents, because they can call them, right? So how are these different ways that you can keep kids asking questions while also helping them connect and then do something with that information? But I would say upper elementary grades, middle and high school, if they have a project they're supposed to be working on, they can do it from afar, especially if technology is a strong option for them. And even if it's not, could you ask them to connect by phone or text or other ways, or FaceTime, that they typically do reach out to each other? I saw a teacher locally had been reaching out to her high school kids, just using, I think it was video chat. I saw another school was on spring break last year, so those teachers were making calls. So it kind of merges tip 2 and tip 3, but what are ways that we let kids know, we're still asking questions, we still want them to be engaging, and how do we proceed with that? I'm going to pause for just a minute and see if Shayla has anything she wants to add, because those were our 3 tips before we really dive in to that.
Yeah, the one thing, and I added a couple of things into the chat as people were talking. And again, we encourage you to do the same as you're thinking of ideas. If you have links to things, please feel free to pop them into the chat window, because we will have access to be able to download the chat window to be able to populate the resources and share them back out. But just one that I shared, Marianne, along the lines of you talking about Rowan making the videos. Like one of my girls, I have school-age children as well. One of her teachers just made a video and posted it, just saying hello to the class and reassuring them that she's not worried about them academically, that, to hold tight. She's going to be putting things together. She's just taking her time to make sure that she shares with them things that are going to keep them moving forward with their, learning. But she also just reminded them of things that they already do every day for homework at home, that they don't need materials from school to do. And just that one video, I could see it just kind of brought some of the anxiety down for my daughter to hear it from her teacher. As much as I want to love and believe that I can tell her all of that and she's going to believe it, we oftentimes know that hearing it from the teacher or the principal can make all the difference in the world. So that's just one other example that I would share that I have personally had experience with, that, helped with the empathy piece, but it also kept the community going, because then a lot of the students were able to respond back and to let her know, we're doing good. Thank you so much. It was great to see your face and to hear your voice again.
And Shayla, I'm just going to add one more that, again, kind of spans across, but I have seen several districts setting up helplines and even having translators available. And I now know that those helplines are likely working from home as well, but you could have options around, they need help with technology, help with, Chapel Hill has technology, has mental health, has academics, and then also meals. And so thinking through, if you're a student that maybe someone hasn't reached out to you, there's a place you can go. And I don't think it has to be overly complicated. It maybe in some of your places, school-based would make even more sense. But just making sure that we have ways that are both, directions where students can connect and reach out. So I really like that. And Shayla, it's great to hear your own child's experience too. So thank you for that.
And I will address, Marianne, one comment that popped up about, being absolutely respectful that not every student has access to technology, or as Marianne mentioned, it could be one family is juggling one device and there could be multiple students in the household. I do know that another teacher that I spoke to, for those who she knows technology may be limited, she's actually writing postcards and dropping them in the mail. Again, just every little thing that we can do to stay connected with our students. Again, not talking about every student, but she is making that effort just to pop a quick note in the mail, just so that they have a way of connecting with her in some way over the next week or so.
Yeah. And Shayla, I think you just hit the key on the head. I do know there are some districts, and I've been in touch with some, where almost 30% of their students don't have internet access at home. And that's a really large number, which may shift what you do in schools. I know some districts are sending home packets that students can do. But even with that, which I think can be very effective, I'm seeing more of that in elementary. You know, is it that quick phone call check-in? Like kids, at least my kids, don't spend a lot of time on the phone, but just to have that outreach. And I think most families have access to a phone. It might not be that you get to connect every day. I know some, districts are trying to send home different options for Wi-Fi as well. And so I think any way we can do it. And when we know that certain kids, like you all know your kids, and when you know certain families or students are the ones that might not have access, that may just shift how you use your time a little bit to make sure that they're getting some of that different type of outreach at the same time. So I love these examples though that are coming up. So this is so helpful. Yeah, another school is sending a postcard to every student. You just want them to feel connected, right, to what's happening. And again, I still just don't think any of us know quite yet what this is going to feel like in another week or two. And we don't want to ignore that our high schoolers also need that special connection. Based on a lot of this input, we would just like to ask kind of where is your district for this transition? So do you anticipate being almost 100% online based on the resources you have in your school or district? You'll have some instruction online, or you really won't plan to have any, but that doesn't mean students might not access some things like virtual field trips, or I saw somebody else posted having administrators read books that the school can access. So it looks like we have a lot of B, where there will be some. And I do appreciate this difference between high school, middle, and elementary, even within the same district. But like Catawba is 1-to-1, so they're going to be 100% online. And I know some districts some levels can go mostly online. So that's really helpful as we go into this. But keep pushing us from the equity perspective, that we make sure we're thinking through that side too. So Shayla, we do have a really big group, but they're also sharing a lot. And so the one thing as we go into these discussion questions, we really want to spend the majority of our time today hearing from you, and we'll talk about challenges, but then we also want to keep talking about what are some of the things you're doing to overcome. But we'd like to start just by hearing the challenges, and all you need to do is unmute yourself. Please don't be shy. Many of us have dogs and kids at home right now. So if that happens, I'm apologizing ahead for myself. Just do not worry about it. So let us know what challenges you're seeing or you're feeling right now, that even thinking towards next week, we might be able to bring more resources, but also someone on this call may have already thought of and addressed.
Jennifer Rosser. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
No, go ahead.
Jennifer Rosser, New Hanover County. So one of the things that we're struggling with this idea of instruction is how are we struggling with that we really can't be providing new instruction without the EC resources, because we do need to be providing the EC minutes. And I don't know that we've fully landed on a way to do that. And just given that it looks like it could possibly be longer than 2 weeks, I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts about how they might be addressing that challenge.
Great. And I think, Jennifer, what I'm seeing others are saying cannot provide new material, things like that. If it's okay with you, I might let a few other people share challenges, and then we'll come back and address them kind of one at a time. Is that okay?
Of course.
So who else has a challenge?
Hi, Christopher Downs, Chapel Hill. And I'm concerned that some of my most vulnerable students are the ones that need the most sort of encouragement and redirection. And, you know, there's such a big difference between sending them an email or even a postcard and hoping that they acknowledge it, as opposed to just, you know, walking over and tapping them on the shoulder in class. And so redirecting students is one that I'm real concerned about.
That's a great point and challenge. And that, I think, cuts across a lot of students, right? That sometimes just need that nudge, but especially our most vulnerable. Are there some other challenges you'd like us to talk through?
Hi, I'm Carrie from Fairfax, Virginia. And
Carrie.
greatest challenge is how to communicate to teachers kind of the shift from what they know to what they don't know. I actually got on Modern Classrooms project, and I'm doing it along with the instructional, I'm an assistant principal, along with the instructional technology specialist at my school. And we're thinking about framing things that way. So we're turning it into an educational kind of opportunity. We're calling this our Super Bowl, right? And so trying to take that optimistic or silver lining approach. But I was curious as to how to, I guess, actions and to help those who might be at the central office level to understand that it's not always about providing instruction right away. It's about doing it right and slowing down a bit.
Those are great points. Thank you, Carrie. Maybe I'll pause just for a couple other challenges, and then we'll start diving in to see. I'm seeing a few of them pop up. One someone mentioned is internet access is a problem, and then also a lack of participation. And one thing that I'm hearing across many districts is just confusion on when some of the e-learning is supposed to, some are calling it e-learning, remote learning, even supposed to start, just with how a lot of schools ended up not going back. That seems to be something that has been confusing there, but we'll add that. So a lack of participation, and in some cases there might be a very valid reason, and then in some cases maybe less of a valid reason. So that's interesting too. Any other challenges that you all would like us to think through today? I'm definitely seeing internet as well in the comments.
Can you hear me, Marianne?
Oh, yeah, now I can.
All right. I've got two. One is meeting the needs of our EC students and trying to meet their service time. That's one thing I think is a big thing. Other thing is our teachers, I've heard people are saying, you know, it's going to be a change. They need to make sure they don't do one trick pony. My daughter's home from graduate school and 5 of her friends are here and they've started online classes. Our dining room is actually their classroom from Boston University. And the damn professors, pardon me, I'm sorry, the professors are using Zoom and they've been in lecture all day long. I thought I would scream myself. So that's,
wow.
our teachers, they need to use technology they're already using and not try anything new on the kids yet. You know, the longer we do it, the more things you can bring out. But we got to, it's like this, slow and steady. That's the big thing. So my big thing is making sure teachers vary and don't worry as much about, you know, trying all these new cool things, go back to what they're used to. And then also the EC component are the two big ones for us.
That's a really, those are both very important. Any final challenges? Thank you so much.
I have one.
Yeah.
Hey, Marianne.
Hello.
I just think this is such a great opportunity to kind of fall forward. Like we're just, and some of our staff they just need that little nudge. And now we have this, like, so many barriers are being lifted. Like, you don't have to worry about managing 20 students all at one time. You don't have this meeting and then this meeting. I mean, you do, but it's very different. Now you are wearing your pajamas on the bottom, a business shirt on the top. How can we capitalize on the teacher's time during the day to say, hey, let's go to the Friday Institute on Wednesdays at 2:00. Everybody chime in. Like, this is a great time for them to really get some good quality staff development free in their house. In that flexible time that we don't typically have as teachers, and lots of times it's used as kind of like a cop out, as I'm overwhelmed, I don't have time. I feel like this week, I know my teachers have planned for at least a week of instruction. So how can I give them that little nudge of jump in the pool? The water's great, and there's no COVID in there.
I love that. And I think I found myself writing something today where I said, keep it simple. And then I thought, well, none of this is simple, right? But at the same time, to your point and Stephen's point and others, if we try to overdo and just add too many things, we're confused, kids are confused, everyone's confused and frustrated. And so I think that's a really good point of how we are patient and kind with ourselves as we go through this new experience where no one's, right, what's the most I know we've had about 30 days people have missed with hurricanes in North Carolina anyway. I know sometimes with snow days it's a few days, but this is more like the hurricane situation, right? And so how do we really take the deep breath and figure that out? So I think right now you all can continue to add challenges in the group chat. Shayla, did any more pop up that you noticed that I missed? Or oh, I see over-assigning work too, which kind of sounds like over-assigning lectures.
Yes, along those same lines. And one I saw earlier was just almost overwhelming the parents with digital resources. That they're just going to shut down. If they get too much too quickly, I think the comment was they're not going to know what to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah, so pick a few key things, a few things you want students to do, right? The consistent things, and then let's be patient with ourselves. So I definitely heard a lot about meeting the needs of our EC students. I think a couple of you said that, and also in the chat. And then also this idea of our most vulnerable students. And I don't want to assume those are necessarily the same students, but I think they need some of the same ideas. So what I'd love to hear now is, have some of you started to think through how you can provide supports for your most vulnerable students who need more of that encouragement, kind of gentle nudging throughout the day? But also, what do you think about for your EC students? And I know this question of service time is really complicated as we look at that too. So I'm just going to pause and see if any of you have some thoughts about that. Anybody come up with some initial solutions or ideas that are helping them think through that?
Go ahead, please go ahead.
Okay. Our guidance counselors are definitely trying to touch base with their people that they regularly see in small groups and individually daily, that they typically see daily in the school day for reasons, it could be divorce groups. We have like little therapy groups, but also we have that with FastBridge. There's a Sabres screener, and I'm going to put the name of it in the chat. Oh no.
Okay.
I need to copy it, but it's let me go over here. It's the Sabres Social, Academic, and Emotional Risk Screener, and you don't have to have the child there to do the screener. You just have to know the child. So that kind of gives you like a numerical value to how at risk they are. And I can't take credit for that. It came from our district office to say this is a great time for those who you might be thinking about, who you might need to look at the most frequently, use the screener. So I put it in the window.
Marcia, that's a really good thought too, because I know some of our districts also use like the ACEs. They go through that process. And so when you are trying to figure out how do we know who needs the daily call versus others, that I think anything like that where you all have done different things, but how might you be able to help your counselors, your social workers, your teachers prioritize? That's a really helpful idea. Any other suggestions around supporting EC students? I feel like this is one of those we're all really nervous about because even the shift in language, I think, complicates it a little bit with knowing that part of how we work with different students is that they need different interventions and different supports throughout the day. And so I think the key here is we're not trying to do one size fits all, but sometimes I think that's harder to explain, especially if we are trying to do this so quickly. And so that kind of goes back to that support as well. But do anybody else just have some thoughts on that?
I'll just add really quick, tomorrow, our elementary.
Can you start again? I'm having a hard time hearing you for some reason.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
So, hi, I'm from Chapel Hill Carver City Schools, and we're starting virtual PLCs, the elementary level tomorrow. So all day long, we have a kindergarten meeting, a first grade meeting, and a second grade meeting. So our PLC leads from every elementary school have been invited to join those discussions, as well as our specialists. So our ESL teachers, our EC teachers, and our gifted education specialists are part of those conversations. And the questions that we're really asking are, what should be district managed versus managed by individual teachers? And we really want to try to find some parameters around particularly supporting ELA and math, so that from a district level, we're thinking about those accommodations and extensions that may be necessary to offer for all students, but particularly for some of our students who may need them. And so if we're designing those lessons from a district level, we are able to then think about how we're providing, universal access in collaboration with our specialists. So we'll see how that goes. Tomorrow will be our first round of virtual PLC. Hear directly from the kinds of support they feel that in order to do that.
Thank you, Jessica. I really love that idea, and I love that you're bringing in the specialist to that. So we'll be eager to hear. Maybe next week you'll report back for us on how those go. That's really helpful. Any other suggestions around supporting our most vulnerable students? I know we covered some general things, but this has been really helpful to get more specific, or our EC students. And I know it was asked as specifically as about service time, which again, the last thing you want to be doing is exposing people to germs that we shouldn't. So I know that's also tricky with some of those services as well. Any last thoughts on that?
Marianne, this is Shayla. I would just share that I spoke with an EC teacher and a parent of an EC child. And again, recognizing there's a spectrum, and this won't necessarily apply to every student, but the one thing that we worked with this parent on was creating a schedule for the day, because we found that for a lot of students, they need that structure. They kind of need to know what's going to happen in the day, what it's going to look like to help relieve their anxiety. So we helped to create a schedule for the parent for the day to kind of give them an idea of what was realistic time for them to sit down and do maybe an activity with them, or to be able to work by themselves. So that teacher was able to say, well, in school, he's able to sit for 20 minutes and to do this site, he really loves Epic, or, whatever it is, and he's middle school. And so for that parent, but also for the EC teacher to work through that with the parent seemed to be really helpful. And Stephen, I think you were the one mentioned earlier about your daughters and the dining room being set up. The other thing that we talked about was establishing a space in the home that student recognized was that space to go and to be able to work and do school stuff. So there was that separation, because they were also struggling with kind of understanding, okay, when is it school? When is it home? What's happening right now? So again, just some ideas of how I know one EC teacher was working with some of her parents. That was just an initial step that she was taking to help get them back on track to be able to start to do some of the things as she introduces it down the road.
That's great. And Shayla, the last thing I'll mention is I've been reading a lot as well and hearing some people say that some students actually might do better with a more, I'm going to call it a traditional online learning experience for lack of another word, but there are students that maybe that hasn't been the opportunity they've taken advantage of, but there are some students who that might actually be a really good structure for them too. So let's not forget that it's a possibility that this might actually ease some of the stresses for certain children or allow a learning environment that works for them. And so if that happens to be the case, I think as we think through that, that could be really helpful too. So another challenge that emerged is this idea of not having internet. And I just want to bring that up because I think we can all get excited about some of the robust types of lessons we can offer, even as I'm talking about how you can have students collaborating and other things. But if we have this issue of not having Wi-Fi at home or devices at home, you know, but it's only a small number of our kids, are there some solutions that you all have come up with? So I'll just pause there to see if, I'm not trying to limit the scope of that question. It could just be, you know, a lot of our kids don't have access, but it feels like in some cases it's when everyone doesn't, then that's when we kind of hit a frustration point in trying to figure out what to do. Does anybody have some suggestions? So a few that I've heard, but this is over time, not just in this situation, is first kind of understanding where students are and who does have access and who doesn't, so not assuming in either way. I know Jessica just posted they're using MiFi to help students who don't have access. Spectrum and a few other companies are offering 60 free days of internet access. I realize you still have to get it hooked up, and that is not simple, but at least there are some possibilities. Over the years, some districts have actually parked buses that have access points and routers. Several districts in North Carolina, but certainly not limited there, have offered that as well. And so you can park a bus near a neighborhood or an area that often doesn't have access. And so if you find out you have, you know, students in certain areas, I think that still could be a possibility. But those are just some of the different options. Or if you happen to have, again, some of those access points that you can share from the district. So I see Granville County, Felicia sharing, is taking buses into communities with hotspots. You know, all those ideas, the more information we have and understanding where students do and don't have access, the better, obviously, but those are some phenomenal solutions. And again, utilizing our buses, doing other things really well like that, I think is really helpful. Are there any other comments? It's really, I'm trying to catch what's in the chat. Oh, another is allowing Wi-Fi capability in parking lots at school. So as long as students are able to stay away from each other, obviously. And then another parent said Spectrum is actually responding pretty quickly. So that's exciting too, that they're really trying to support our families in that. So another problem that you all talked about was like how to really support teachers into doing this right and not just throwing everything out there. And so I know we just heard about some virtual PLCs, really some encouragement about, you know, having teachers take opportunities to learn. But I wondered if any of you have some other thoughts on how to support teachers to go ahead and really make good choices for students and guide them through that.
So we're very much working through the Quality Matters framework and trying to take what we know, you know, we're laughing because when we think about, you know, pedagogy and how elementary teachers are really masters of that, but then when we look at our high school groups, it's usually very content focused, and really how to get the different levels to support each other as they're developing. We haven't quite figured out how to do that yet, but it's definitely something we've been thinking about.
Those are great suggestions. I think even just messaging to your teachers that we do want to keep this simple and choose a few things that have worked well in school that you might be able to use. I believe, Tanya, that it was the Quality Matters framework. And I even went and looked. One superintendent reached out to me yesterday asking for some rubrics around online learning. And I think part of it is balancing, you know, there's some very rich rubrics that have many, many parts to it if you were developing a whole online course or an online program. But when we're doing so, when it's so fast and doing so many things, it's also, okay, what are the things we want to make sure? We want to make sure we're reinforcing learning, we're providing different pathways for kids, we're helping them connect. And so it may even be that you all want to come up with, as a school, what are some key things in terms of instruction? I know we shared a few tips early on, but what are those you know, most important things? I also see that some media coordinators are helping with presentations using Google Hangouts or Zoom. So, you know, different days, if you do have access, can you do that? And then also, I think how do we have our district folks supporting our teachers and our principals, and vice versa, providing some feedback there. So I think there's a lot of different layers. But a lot of, I think, is giving people permission to try, and maybe, I think someone said fail forward. Marcia, I think that was you, that what you do on day one might not be what you do on day 4 of this situation. And so I think coming up with some core principles of what you want. I've seen some districts say for middle and high school, assume you're trying to lead them towards 30 minutes of instruction, maybe not the whole class period like you normally would, but then some work. And I've even wondered about, like, one idea that I've seen implemented, not in these trying times, but is more of a project-based learning across the school, where everybody in the school could be working on something, whether it's around energy, whether it's around viruses, what that is, but are there some different aspects of that that is more cross-curricular and allows students to really build some strong skills, but still, I guess some people have shied away from a lot of new information, so maybe more applying what you've learned already. But those are some ideas that I've seen that whenever we go back to school, we could really see carried forth. So I'll pause right now and see if anybody has any other challenges or thoughts on how to really do a better job, especially looking at who's in this group today. How do we most effectively support our teachers? And I think checking in on them is really important. So I really like that. And I do see this comment here. I'll just call out about structuring how much information we share with teachers. That's part of what I mentioned at the beginning sparked us doing these, is that we were overwhelmed by all the great lists out there and great information, and then you add on top of all the other aspects. So what do we do to kind of help, right, funnel, okay, these are the critical pieces, these are the most important things. So lots of great chat going on. Shayla, did you want to add anything? No pressure, just an option.
Sorry, I was trying to get myself off of. No, I have, just so everybody knows, I have been jotting all of this down so that we can start to populate a document to share back out later. But, you know, lots of great recommendations. There was, you know, just again, that reminder, somebody posted, you know, it's important to also be making those personal connections with the teachers, because their social emotional well-being is also being taxed right now. So I thought that was another just great reminder that, again, going back to not just flooding them with lots of emails and text messages, but sometimes also just picking up the phone and touching base with them individually to see how they're doing can go a long ways.
And Shayla, I think with that is also helping, like teachers in their buildings often have their go-to people, their PLCs, and they're probably working with them, but I've worked from home on and off for the majority of my career. Like I've often done that. So for me, it's very comfortable and, you know, I'm used to all the aspects of that, but most of our teachers have never or rarely actually had that experience. And so helping to guide them or helping to say, hey, we're all going to come together, you know, even as a principal or assistant principal, or you all bringing your teachers together using Zoom, that's free right now for everybody, or using some other tool that you have in your district. You know, how are you giving people a chance, even if it's just asking questions like what we're asking today? What are the challenges? What have you done? How are you doing? So I think, again, just like we don't want our kids to feel isolated, we don't want our teachers to. And a few good ideas, like if you do the video consistently every day, or you have story hour where different people are reading, or there's some great artists that are doing lessons every day at one. I cannot think of the person's name right now, but it's been all over Facebook. And, you know, you can go on and participate in that. Thank you, Mo Willem. Thank you. So, you know, don't be afraid to tap in. I've really enjoyed also like thinking through virtual field trips, and that can be great for kids. But again, trying to be realistic about what people can do. Can they access the school video on a phone if there's a smartphone in their house, you know, those kinds of things. And Marcia actually shared with us what she shared with her staff. So just some kind of trying to boil it down, which I really appreciate there too. Any final challenges? Because one of the things Shayla and go ahead, Shayla.
I was just going to say, I did also want to comment on Nancy Hatley's post. Again, I know for a lot of us, we think, oh, well, that totally makes sense, but we're in an interesting space right now where people may not be thinking through like, oh, we should do it that way. And I loved her suggestion, how her district level directors, they've created a Google Doc, and each day they add their news and instructions for their area. And then that one document gets shared with principals, and it indicates what should be shared with teachers. So instead of principals getting all the different emails from the different departments, they're just getting one each day that they know to look to. And they're also getting consistency. Other directors, I would assume, can see what other folks are doing. So again, just wanted to make sure if you missed that one that she posted, I think that's another great way to start to think about managing, even down to the school level, by grade levels, teachers, principals, you know, how are you helping to structure the communication to help streamline, but to also model what we hope teachers will start to do with parents. So I just wanted to point that one out because I thought it was a really great suggestion.
Thank you, Shayla. That's really helpful. So we will take these challenges and we're going to ask you at the end in a survey just to share any more that you're struggling with, because I think we're going to know some of those this week, and next week they may change. We did not spend a lot of time today talking about all the work you're doing to make sure kids that don't have meals have meals. I know so much energy. I saw someone mention in the chat, like that was the first thing I think almost every district or school has known they had to do. And it's a lot of work, but it also is a great reminder of how communities come together. So really appreciating that. And so I think feel free to list additional challenges. We'll collect them at the end. But we had one more question, I think, for you, and I appreciate all of you sticking with us. We just wanted to know, like, based on our discussion and the experiences you're having in your district right now, I feel that to be successful in these uncertain times, I need to be blank. So if you can just add that to the chat. Purposeful, trusted, available, calm, empathetic, relevant. We're a lot of flexible here. Humorous, yes. Jeff, I agree, resilience is definitely up there. Kind, Donna, thank you for reminding us of that. I think we all want to be supporting students in ways that really will make a difference and help keep them calm, and we want to continue to make a big difference for them. And so this is helpful. I agree about the creative. I think we're going to keep getting pushed as well on that, and really thinking about what available means, right? How are we available in different ways? So Thank you all so much for sharing that. So the last thing we just wanted to ask you to do is to complete this survey. We will do an auto generation for a certificate. It may not be as important for you all, but we had a lot of our educators and coaches ask for that, but you'll get one too in case that's helpful. We're going to take all this information as well as the results from this survey in order to design next week what this looks like and how we do that. And do not be shy to reach out to Shayla and me about other things that we can do to be helpful, because I think our goal is to try to not overwhelm, but instead to bring together and try and remind each other we're all going through this, and then at the same time, some really tangible examples, which we've gotten today. So I'm so grateful for that. Shayla, any final word as people complete the survey?
Yeah, just to clarify, whenever you complete the survey and hit submit, read carefully the message once you hit submit, because it will provide you with a link to download the survey. So it's something you'll get as soon as you complete the survey. But there will also be an option where if you have not RSVP'd, but you do want to be placed on our email distribution list just to get future resources, updates, things that we have going on. If you also head back to our website and RSVP, or I think there should be a link whenever you hit submit to do that. Again, it's completely optional. It is not required to be a part of these conversations. It just allows you to get email information directly from us for future reference.
That's awesome. Well, don't be shy. Please reach out when we can do anything. We'll take all this feedback. This is a bit of a learning experience for us. We do a lot of these things, but we're in new situations too. So thank you so much. And we hope you will join us next week. And we are just ready. If you have good ideas that we can help share out, we are ready to do that. So thank you everyone so much.
And we will keep the chat window open for just a bit if you do want to keep adding resources. I also added the bit.ly link for the survey. So again, you're welcome to stay out here for just a bit. I know some of you may still be reading through the chat window, but again, thanks so much for joining us, and we hope you'll be back with us next Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and invite your friends and colleagues if they also would benefit or be a resource for this work.
Yeah, and one more thing, Shayla, I'm going to mention is we actually had a call earlier today, a couple of us with the Principal Association, and so we are going to offer a separate FI Connect for principals, I think starting next Tuesday at 1:30. Obviously, that can be principals and assistant principals. They've been getting a lot of requests, and so it might be a lot of this group. So you would have a couple options, but it'll be, you know, a very similar format and kind of building on that. We just wanted to make sure that they're able to reach out. And then somebody else asked about teachers, and teachers, we do have teachers in the elementary, middle, and high groups today. But I think maybe something you all can help us with is, what about, like, how could we reach more of those teachers? And I think we sent this out pretty far and wide, but we know a lot of times you end up the ones that are already on Twitter, the ones that are already connected. So, you know, if you all want to share this with your teachers, that's wonderful. But also, if you have some other suggestions for how we might be able to reach some other teachers, we will.
And lastly, I know a couple of folks before the session who couldn't make it did ask if where they could find the recordings. Again, we will include it in an email if you're on the email distribution list, but the bit.ly is also up here. Probably no later than tomorrow, we should have this recording up there, but we will also have future recordings posted from the other groups. Because if you're not aware, we also have a middle school conversation going on, high school, elementary. So if you are interested in, oh, I'd love to hear what the middle school group talked about, that recording will be available probably by sometime tomorrow. And yes, I will have that link into the chat window right now.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, and we will look forward to seeing you next week, but do not be shy. Reach out and let us know how we can support you. And Stephen, good luck with the graduate school going on in your dining room. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.